So I think depending on who you ask, the Beast Shield was either one of the best or absolute worst pieces of gear in Borderlands 2. On the one hand, there's no doubt that the Beast Shield made most weapons in Borderlands 2 far more powerful, and on the other hand, the Beast Shield is kind of infamous, as it was both overpowered and possibly could have inspired some of the design choices for Borderlands 2's Ultimate Vault Hunter mode that made that difficulty far more punishing than it really should have been. Today, I'd like to talk about the Beast Shield and whether the Beast Shield should return for Borderlands 3. I'll be making a case for and against the Beast Shield's return and ultimately just give you guys my own verdict. So I guess without further ado, let's discuss why the Beast Shield should return in Borderlands 3. It could be said that the whole point of Borderlands is the pursuit of finding the best or perfect gun, and once you finally hit Borderlands 2's endgame, having that assortment of amazing gear and weapons is ultimately what's going to be keeping people playing. In the case of the Beast Shield, part of its appeal is that it's basically a raw damage boost for any weapon that you can equip, and while certain weapons like shotguns, E-Tech weapons, and rocket launchers don't benefit from the Beast Shield quite as much, almost everything else, including SMGs, pistols, assault rifles, and snipers, all greatly benefit from the Beast Shield's use. In fact, I would argue that obtaining your very first Beast Shield can be a pretty magical experience for this reason. All of a sudden, this shield drops, you pick it up, you equip it, and all of a sudden, you're hearing this weird sound when your shots connect with enemies. And then you also notice this massive damage increase, and suddenly it's like all of your weapons have been improved. This raw damage increase, thanks to the Beast Shield's high amp damage and non-existent amp shield drain, is awesome and can make the player feel really powerful, and thus it makes an excellent reward for the player once it's been acquired. And if the Beast Shield were to return in Borderlands 3, I think it would be a great addition to the roster of the next game's weapons and gear. Now, I think that it's worth mentioning that while the Beast Shield does allow the player to become far more powerful, I also think that it's not always the best choice. After all, the Beast Shield is greatly limited by its high shield recharge delay and its overall low capacity. So while you do become far more powerful, you also become a bit of a glass cannon. There are a lot of instances in Borderlands 2 where you would want to have some decent defense. For example, maybe you're fighting enemies that use a lot of gun-type weapons, and for that reason, the Sham Shield or any other absorption-type shield would probably be a better choice. Or maybe you're fighting enemies in the big Game Hunt or Dragon Keep DLCs that have a lot of ranged attacks that can't be absorbed by an absorption shield. Perhaps a turtle shield or something like the antagonist would be better for that purpose. I guess what I'm getting at here is that while the Beast Shield does have the potential to be overpowered, again, there are a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to use it. And if you did use it in these situations, you would actually make certain in-game areas a little bit more difficult. After all, the Beast Shield is best in situations where you're not going to be hit very much, and if you are going to be hit a lot, you might as well be using another shield. Another reason that I'd like to see the Beast Shield return is because it's a great item to have if you've planned on doing a lot of farming, and as stated previously, when you combine the Beast Shield with something like the Sandhawk, Becca, Lyuda, or even the Unkempt Herald, you have a great combo to farm a lot of Borderlands 2's mini-bosses for their specific gear, and while it still might be a trek to get to the boss that you intend to farm, provided that the bee is equipped, you should be able to defeat those enemies fairly quickly, so you can quickly reset and do it all over again. So if you ask me, Borderlands 2's Beast Shield made farming much easier, faster, and a little bit less of a hassle. But I guess just to recap, I'd like to see the Beast Shield return in Borderlands 3 because it's fun to use. It's not always the best choice, and I think it's relatively balanced. And it also is because the Beast Shield was a great item to have if you were farming a lot of Borderlands 2's mini-bosses. However, it's time we discuss why the Beast Shield shouldn't return in Borderlands 3. One of the points of contention about the B-Shield is that there are many that feel that the B-Shield is too overpowered. In fact, a stigma has formed around using the B, as there are many people that feel that it doesn't really take that much skill to use. And I think on some level, these people are right that using the B throughout the game definitely can make Borderlands 2 way easier. Especially if you have a Sandhawk, because you can combine the B with the Sandhawk to get the B-Hawk combo, and that will allow you to make short work of most of Borderlands 2's generic mob enemies. Even on the higher difficulties, as long as you are properly matching elements to the enemy that you're shooting, you should easily be able to defeat whatever generic enemy is in front of you with that B-Hawk combo. To go along with that, it's speculated that one of the reasons that Ultimate Vault Hunter mode has enemies with quadrupled health is to somewhat counteract the insane amount of power that the B-Shield provides. After all, if you can equip the B-Shield and significantly boost the damage of pretty much every weapon in the game, aren't the enemies going to need a little bit more health to make them a little bit more of a challenge? At the very least, it's worth pointing out that the B-Shield isn't in Borderlands the pre-sequel at all, and Ultimate Vault Hunter mode is actually a little bit easier in the pre-sequel, possibly for that reason. And if you don't have to balance the game for an item that provides a large damage boost all of the time, you might be able to get away with the enemies having a little bit less health. Speaking of the pre-sequel, like I said, the B-Shield was not featured in the pre-sequel at all, and while you can still acquire amp shields, which the B-Shield is a unique variant of, the only legendary amp shield in the pre-sequel is the Rerouter, and while it looks similar and even sports the high amp damage of the B-Shield, unlike the B-Shield, the Rerouter drains your shield, but heals the player for the exact same amount. So what's happening is the player's shield gets drained, and the drained shield is rerouted and restores a portion of the player's health. And while the rerouter is kinda dumb, it does illustrate what may possibly have been 2K Australia's desire to avoid the B-Shield and some of the balance problems that it could present in the game. We should also probably talk about the B-Shield and how it was originally nerfed by the developers over at Gearbox. Now, at Borderlands 2's launch, the B-Shield was unbelievably powerful and would actually apply its amp damage across each individual projectile. So if you had a shotgun that would normally deal about 50,000 damage across 7 bullets that deal about 7,100 damage each, you could increase that total damage to 329,000 with the B-Shield that boosted your damage by 40,000. TDR weapons were probably even crazier though. Originally, the B-Shield's amp damage was being applied to each bullet in a magazine for a TDR reload, and I guess the way it worked was that if you had the Baby Maker that dealt about 5,000 damage and had a magazine size of 38, you would now be dealing 1.7 million damage with that exact same 40,000 damage B-Shield. Regardless, all of this was pretty crazy, and as I'm sure you're all aware of, this was obviously patched early on in Borderlands 2's lifespan to more closely resemble how the B-Shield functions now. Instead of the amp damage applying to each bullet, amp damage is now applied to all of the listed projectiles on the item card, and in the case of TDR reloads, amp damage no longer applies at all. But I guess the big theme that ties all of this together is that the B-Shield's introduction into the Borderlands games basically presented a lot of unforeseen balancing issues. Now, if you had asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would not want to see the B-Shield return in any future games. However, after some reflection over these last 2 to 3 years, I've changed my mind. One of the reasons for that is because the B-Shield is really iconic to the franchise at this point, and when Borderlands 3 finally gets announced, I think there are going to be a fair amount of people that are going to be expecting to find a B-Shield in the game. This phenomenon is similar to how players of Borderlands 1 may have expected the return of certain weapons like the Hellfire, Volcano, Skull Masher, and a few others for Borderlands 2. Then when they received them as drops in-game, they got pretty excited. The second reason is because while the B shield is a little overpowered, there are ways that Gearbox could design the next game to make it to where the B isn't always the most practical choice. As I mentioned earlier, there are instances in Borderlands 2 when it's probably a bad idea to use the B shield, and if you incorporate more of these situations into the next game, you could still have this awesome shield that's mostly used for endgame farming and when you might need a damage boost to fight a really hard boss. The third reason is because I don't really see a better alternative to the B shield, and I'm sure there are very creative people over at Gearbox that have some good ideas for alternatives to the B shield, but I do wonder how you make a worthwhile unique or legendary amp shield that isn't the B. The rerouter is really lame, because what's the point of it? Sure, it's cool that I can restore health, but wouldn't you just rather have the B shield? Sort of like how you would rather have the Infinity from Borderlands 2 over the Proletarian Revolution from the pre-sequel. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm open to an alternative, but I don't want that alternative to suck. And if you already have something that is really awesome, there's no point in fixing it. So while I would like to see the B shield return in Borderlands 3, I would also like to see more ways for enemies, the environments, or just the game itself to counteract the B. For example, I think a cool idea might be to have enemies that are totally immune to amp damage. So maybe you could have the B shield and you could use it on an amp damage immune enemy, but you're dealing the exact same amount of damage that you would if you didn't have the B shield equipped. Or maybe you could have enemies that have this aura, and if you walk into it, it drains your shield. And since you couldn't reach that full charge, you can't really take advantage of the B's amp damage potential. Or you have a situation like Hyperius from Borderlands 2, where he has a shield that reduces damage so much to where the B is simply ineffective. But if you disable Hyperius' shield, you can then damage him with the B shield and whatever else you might have. I think the key here would be to allow the B shield to retain its properties, but to present the player with situations where the B shield is either impractical or there's simply a better option. Maybe there could be a couple of balance tweaks, like slightly higher or lower amp damage or shield recharge delay, but I would like to see the B shield return mostly as is for Borderlands 3. At the end of the day, it's hard to say what Borderlands 3 is going to be like, but if amp shields return like they did in the pre-sequel, I would definitely like to see the B shield over something like the rerouter any day. But alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, and let me know whether you think the B shield should or shouldn't return in Borderlands 3. Leave that in the comments below. Otherwise, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.